Welcome to the show, Elaine. I'm so excited to have you here because what you're doing in your field with collaborative divorce, I think is so important. And I think so many of our listeners don't even know it exists. So I'm really excited to hear about what you're doing, more details about what a collaborative divorce is, and how we can have a more compassionate lens on the whole experience of divorce. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh,
And I am so excited about your whole focus on a new lens on
thank you.
life's transitions. And that
Thank
is
you.
exactly what we're trying to do with collaborative divorce.
Okay. Well, can you take me back to the beginning when you decided to go in this direction as an attorney? What happened?
Sure. So we talk about a guy named Stu Webb out of Minnesota being the founder of collaborative divorce, and it now goes back, I don't know, 30 years, when he wrote a letter to his judge in his little community and said, you know what, this court system does not work for families going through divorce. We want to do it a different way. And
Hmm.
fundamentally, that different way is lawyers still help. We still have this absolute legal frame of reference. But,
Hmm.
but the easiest description of collaborative divorce is the lawyers sign an agreement with the clients, with the spouses, with the partners that says we're not going to court. And that puts us all in together in a settlement mode of resolving their differences.
Okay. So it's like you're taking away, I'm having this vision in my mind of like the exit door, but the exit door is going out of the relationship to a judge, to court, to trial.
100%. Because the reality is that 95% of all divorces in every community around the world settle. People reach agreement
Okay.
for many, many reasons. Our judicial systems are overburdened. There aren't enough resources. It's not that our judges don't try and do the right thing, they do. But here, where I am in Central Florida, Orlando, each judge has thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of cases in front of them. They can't begin to adequately address the unique and individual needs and concerns of every family.
Okay.
And I also have this sort of historic explanation of why the court system makes no sense for divorces. I don't know if that's interesting to your
It
listeners.
is. It is. I would love to hear this.
Okay, so our judicial system in the UK, in the British colonies, we were a British colony once, right? In the United States, is really based on criminal activities and what we call torts, personal injury. Back in the day when the horse and the carriage hit the pedestrian, or now today an automobile accident, whatever it is. And those are one-offs. Those
Hmm.
are whether it's a criminal act or an accident, think about it, or somebody slips and falls, or even an airplane disaster, whatever it is, it's a one-off. It happens really in an instant of time.
Hmm.
And the remedies we have for that are either a dollar amount or jail. In the civil arena, outside criminal, you think about an automobile accident. In my community, we have all these billboards that say, my lawyer got me a gazillion dollars because I was injured, kind of thing. And so we think about, how do we resolve those cases? Well, the person who got hurt wants skillions, and the insurance company or the defendant wants to pay zero. And so they resolve it with a single dollar amount someplace in the middle.
Okay.
That's really the model for our court system, but families are so much more complex than that. They
Hmm.
have years of shaping their world, bringing children into the world, making decisions together, doing all this stuff. The
Hmm.
idea that a judge would resolve that is pretty crazy if you think about it.
It's a stranger. It's someone who doesn't know you at all, doesn't know your children, doesn't know your family history, doesn't know you personally at all. And giving them all the power is very shocking. When you explain it that way, it's shocking to me that that exists at all today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so no fault divorce actually came into existence in California, of course,
Hmm.
way back when, and I want to say in the early 80s. And the grand design was that it would be no fault divorce, but that the state would fund a whole system of social workers and mediators and counselors who would try and do a holistic approach to reimagining families. And of course, the no fault piece went into place, but the money for all of that never did.
Mm.
So, so collaborative divorce is trying sort of on the private end, when lawyers are, private enterprise for the most part, are on the private end to create a system that focuses on families and children and the needs of each spouse and each parent and each partner, and not freezing people at their very worst moment in time, because
Mhm.
we've all done stuff we're not proud of, right? and and sometimes people say to me, well, will you fight for me? And my answer to that is, no. I think you've done a pretty good job of that till now. If you
Yeah.
hadn't done a pretty good job of that, you would be talking to me, right? So no, I won't
Yes.
fight with you, but will I help you figure out and design a new lens for your family going forward? We'll
Okay.
absolutely try and do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And in light of the new lens and the lens concept, and we discussed a little bit before the show that something that really touched you was the idea of looking at divorce through the lens of compassion. And I would love to hear more about what you mean precisely by that word.
Oh, what a lovely question. Um, Sometimes we use compassion, sometimes we use empathy, but
Hmm.
that sense of, yeah, no matter how badly people have behaved, and
Hmm.
sometimes they behave pretty badly,
Hmm.
does it really help to think about the future in terms of punishment for those worst behaviors? you know,
Hmm.
in a context in which these two people got married, fell in love, got naked, do the things you do when you get naked. They did all of that. They have a whole history of all of that.
Hmm.
And we find that the people who get our legal system gets them stuck at the worst moment of their lives.
Hmm.
It really does. And that doesn't do any good for anybody, right? To be, if you're the good guy, or the good woman in the relationship, to be stuck sort of in that victim mentality, he did this to me. How does that help you move forward? It may be true. I'm
Right.
not saying there's some truth to this, but here's the compassion or the empathy piece, both for the person who perceives himself, as the good guy and the bad guy, for want of a better word, right?
Yeah.
If we try and get people to imagine moving forward with that focus on, um, how do we get everybody to be their best? Certainly, that's
Hmm.
what children need. Children
Yes.
need two parents who can be at their best, not at
Hmm.
their worst.
Hmm.
I sometimes
Hmm.
think there should be two different kinds of divorces: one kind if you have children, and one kind if you don't. But
Yeah.
it's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. No, definitely. So you're saying that the compassion is extended hopefully onto the other person, and so that it's a different experience instead of being in this hateful, angry mode.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's all this literature about forgiveness, and who does
Mhm.
forgiveness really matter to? Well, it matters to the person who's doing the forgiving, who's
Mhm.
putting down that burden of carrying all this
Mhm.
anger and stuff. And not to get too touchy-feely, but both spouses, both partners in a relationship that's ending have that job of moving forward.
Mhm.
So whatever that's going to look like for this family, and that's one of the things we say about collaborative, is it's that focus on the future, not on the past. And sometimes the metaphor we use is, the model we use is, like when you're driving a car, right? The rear view mirror is really tiny, but the windshield in front of you is pretty big.
Yeah.
And so we can't do anything about how they got here.
Mhm.
Can't do anything about that. And in
Mhm.
most cases, we can't change in virtually all, we can't change the past.
Yeah.
This is where we are today. So collaborative puts this future on, okay, this is where we are today. For purposes of this family, it's less important how we got here than what we're going to do to make everybody as whole as they can be moving forward.
What I'm hearing you say with this process is it's almost moving them forward more in this transition than a stereotypical divorce because there's really no emotional work towards moving forward. It's more just about getting a deal done. And it sounds like what you're describing is kind of moving people forward in their own process of the divorce emotionally.
Thank you for hearing that. And in our best collaborative work, we get there, but not always.
Okay,
Sometimes it's just about moving them forward with or without that emotional
got
healing.
it. Got
It
it.
it depends on the family, it depends on the individuals in front of
Mhm,
us. Sometimes what people just need is a path forward, as
mhm.
opposed to the litigation system, which simply sticks them in the past for a very long time.
Okay.
So
Yep.
collaborative can do for folks is one, make it all private. Our
Mhm.
litigation system, even if a judge doesn't decide, once you file a case for divorce, which you always have to do to get divorced, but in collaborative, we can maintain people's privacy way
Okay.
more than any litigation model. That's
Okay.
that's she. I mean, I think that's really a huge factor for
It
most.
is. It
And
is.
frankly, the more wealth you have, the more assets, or the more complex your financial situation, I would think the more you would want that privacy for yourself
Yes,
and your family. Yeah.
definitely. Can you describe a little bit more about this? Because I'm assuming in the model with collaborative divorce, you have other support systems in place. Can you
We
explain that a little more?
again, we try and tailor it to each family.
Mm-hmm.
In an ideal collaborative setting, we have a lawyer for each spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a financial neutral. So again,
Mm.
in the litigation model, you're sort of one piece of the war is tell me about your finances, tell me about your finances, what don't I know? In collaborative, we engage and when finances are complicated in a traditional litigated divorce, there's often two financial experts being hired.
Okay.
Collaborative avoids that by having one neutral financial to gather all the information,
Mm-hmm.
to do all the education of the spouse who may be less familiar with all the financial nuances,
Mm-hmm.
to help them, like when there's when finances get complex, like somebody in business for themselves, or has a big piece of a big business or a small business. If there's something other than a W-2 employee, if they're
Mm-hmm.
self-employed, finances can be a little bit complex, even
Mm-hmm.
if there's not a whole lot of money. But so when we bring in a neutral financial, we get more and better information more efficiently and more privately, and we can do all of that education. Because just imagine if you and I are keeping secrets, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, if one person can talk to both of us,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that one person going to do a way better job of figuring out what all those secrets are?
Yes.
And if one person is talking to me, one person is talking to you, and then they may or those other two may or may not have to talk to each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And there's a more of the guard coming down because there's always that trigger of I'm not hearing the truth. I'm hearing one side. What is he hearing? And this fear starts being triggered. And it reminds me too of something I heard recently on the Mel Robbins podcast where she had an expert on. And they said basically everyone is about 8 years old. Everyone, everyone. They
Yeah.
said we didn't grow up in a time where our parents were emotionally mature. That wasn't the model, unless you were very, very lucky,
Mm,
because it was never taught to them either, and to us. Hopefully, the next generation's getting more information, but really, inside, people are young and they're 8 year olds going through a divorce. And I've been divorced and I know that feeling. It's triggering very old feelings. It's
mm.
not even always about what's going on right now. So, can really get into the situation. I can imagine would give such a better outcome.
That is the idea. And so we know that fear, when we're trying to make decisions when we're afraid,
Mhm.
That's like the worst time to make decisions.
Yeah.
So
And
the
they're big.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the other thing that we do in collaborative is we bring in somebody with a mental health background, a
Mhm.
psychologist, a
Mhm.
therapist, a social
Mhm.
worker, somebody who's trained in emotions,
Mhm.
not to do therapy, but to help facilitate conversation, to get
Mhm.
everybody past and through their 8-year-old selves, their scared selves,
Yeah.
to work with people enough so that they can get, so that, the old brain stem, so that we can get them thinking in the front of their brains instead of way back in the dinosaur piece of their brains, which is
Yeah.
fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
Nobody can think well under those circumstances, and litigation triggers those reptilian feelings like crazy,
Yeah.
because it is scary and
Mhm.
intimidating.
Mhm.
And how scary, this myth that the judge is going to be like me better and the judge is going to do it my way, that almost never happened. And not because the judges don't try to do the right thing, but remember, there are always 5 sides to every story.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
judges can only hear like this much when people's life stories are, this big.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so, so,
Definitely.
so we bring in this neutral. We often call them, sometimes we call them a coach, sometimes we call them a facilitator.
Mhm.
Sometimes for football fans, we call them a quarterback.
Okay.
Because I've learned this recently, because quarterbacks call audibles. Are you a football fan?
Yeah.
What that
Yeah.
means?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that calling audibles, adjusting to what's going on in the field in the moment, even if it's not what the play was, kind of
Mhm.
running the team, running the show.
Okay.
And people are afraid of lawyers, even
Mhm.
as a collaborative lawyer, right? People, the
Mhm.
other spouse is going to think, well, I'm all about them and I'm going to, and I'm, so we meet in a room together, a virtual room or a real room, my preference, and the team works together. And I often say that I can say exactly the same words in exactly the same tone of voice as one of the neutrals, but both spouses will hear it better from the neutrals
Yeah.
than from either lawyer.
Yes. Yes. They're hearing something different than if you were saying it. It's the same message, but it's coming in different for the different person, I'm sure.
Yeah. Again, to use your lens model,
Mhm.
before I even open my mouth, the lens that they see me through is as the lawyer for their soon to be
Mhm.
ex.
Yes. Yes.
So
It's
that colors everything that they are capable of hearing.
right. Okay. So you build a team, you have a supportive team of necessary people to
Mhm,
help these two people come to a new way of being together and
mhm,
separate. And
mhm.
that you find that even though not everyone is able to begin that emotional process of moving forward, they're able to, would you say, just achieve more holistic outcomes, more thoughtful outcomes?
100%. Because what we know is that if people choose their own path, even if it's not 100% of what they want, it never is. But
Mm-hmm.
if they have that power to make their own choices,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to feel so much better about it than if it's imposed on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have data that tells us that if people have gone through a collaborative process, make their own choices about outcomes, they're much more likely to follow them. They're much more likely to be good co parents together. They're
Okay.
much more likely to follow through on the financial commitments, alimony, child support, whatever they happen to be.
Because they're signing up for, they're proactively making the decisions.
Yeah.
So they're already invested on some level to those decisions without having someone just say, this is it. This is what we're
Right.
doing. They've already got a stake in it. So it just makes so much sense to me that
Mhm,
this is happening,
mhm,
and that there's an uptick in this kind of divorce
mhm.
because it's really painful and it hurts. It's awful. It's
Yeah.
gutting.
Yeah.
And people need better options to cope with all of those emotions and all those changes.
Yeah. For sure. So lots of people know about mediation, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a pretty common word at this point. Collaborative is not as common.
Okay.
So people are always asking me, well, isn't it like mediation?
Hmm.
And they have a lot of similarities. The
Hmm.
goals are the same, to give people a chance to do a private outcome resolution solution that they control, that's not imposed on them. So
Hmm.
that those goals are the same. What's different is the way mediation works in practice.
Hmm.
So number one, it's different because it is very typical that mediation works really well for two similarly situated spouses
Okay.
if they each have their own income, if they have equal knowledge about the
Hmm.
finances, if
Hmm.
they're equally financially sophisticated,
Hmm.
if there isn't a huge imbalance in power and control, mediation can work pretty well.
Okay.
It's a good thing. However, many families are not there.
Okay.
And so there's a huge discrepancy
Hmm.
between their knowledge and their power and their ability to speak for themselves and their comfort with economic decisions.
Hmm.
And so in those situations, lawyers can be really helpful to do the education piece. But
Hmm.
also, sometimes it's like reining my own client in.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to have to pay alimony. That's just the way it is. You earn
Yeah.
because of time. So sometimes the lawyers are also really helpful in putting a realistic gloss with their own client. I
Okay.
can say things to my own client that a mediator can't say.
Oh, I see. I didn't realize that. Okay.
100%. I mean, we're
Okay.
not, we're there to solve, I think that I've represented my client well when they haven't won. There is no winning.
Hmm.
And I say that because back in the day, I litigated cases and I litigated a lot of cases with a lot of money in them. And when I won big, and then and those were, some of them were, very traditional. He went out to work, she stayed home, raised the kids. This was years ago.
Hmm.
And so when I won big, and this was not something that they had agreed to, and if something changed, and it always does, right? He
Yeah.
lost his job, let's say.
Hmm.
This family now, divorced, had no ability to cope with that change.
Okay.
Whereas in collaborative, hopefully, we're trying
Hmm.
also to teach people to be kind with each other and to have some tools
Hmm.
to deal with change as it happens out into the future.
Okay, great. So your work too, because of all your experience as a collaborative, practicing collaborative divorce attorney, do you feel like you can um, have that extra layer to your guidance to your clients? Do you also touch into some of the emotional pieces?
Absolutely. I mean, I one of my favorite stories, and I can tell this because she was willing to video a little thing, and it's up on my website about how collaborative was helpful to her. So this was a stay-at-home mom who had just after the kids were, into their teenage, had gone and gotten some education and was just about to go back into the workforce, and he left and was one of these guys who earned a lot and didn't earn a lot and earned a lot and didn't earn a lot. Um, and at the moment they were divorcing, he kind of, because he was the smartest guy in the room always. And he came up with the solution. Look, just take all the assets, really out of the box solution. You take all the assets, but don't ask me for any alimony.
Okay.
And she was shaking in her boots about that because she had only just recently gone to work.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't have to make these decisions like that. She had
Mm-hmm.
time to sit on them. And I was able to talk to her about it privately. And the financial neutral, it is so funny because the financial neutral, I had independent conversations with her, but we had worked together a lot. And we virtually both said the same thing to her, not, unscripted. We hadn't prepared. which was that given this guy's like this, up and down and up and down and up and down over his lifetime, there was enough money and she was clearly stable in her career in the healthcare industry that she was going to be fine without alimony.
Yeah.
And
And
a judge would have given her alimony because he had way more income than she did for the moment, which would only have lasted until something changed in the future. Now, that happened some years ago, and it turned out we were really, really right.
okay.
She did really well in her career, and he,
Mhm.
in fact, did not.
Mhm.
Had a whole, sometimes what do the financial industry people say? The past isn't any predictor of the future, but
Mhm.
sometimes it is, right? You look at a
Yes.
guy who's gone up and down and up and down in his career, and that
Mhm.
is like
So in that case, you were able to give her a little bit more than just your legal expertise. It's more kind of tapping into more understanding the nature of him and her and looking deeper at it
right.
than just on the surface.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's fantastic. I want to ask you, I ask every guest, what would be the lens that you would like to recommend to listeners that you have found to be very helpful or that you use yourself? And it sounds like it for you. Is it the lens of compassion in this case?
I love that.
It would be yours. Yours would be the lens of compassion. I wonder if you would um, take that lens, and how can a woman who's listening that's going through the angst and the pain of all this turn that lens toward herself and have more compassion out and in, because the lens works both ways. So you looking out is having more compassion, like you said earlier, towards your partner that's you're separating from. How what are your thoughts on having her also turn that lens inward of the compassion?
Whoa, that's such a great question. I have to think about that. But a person I'm working with currently comes to mind who, and sometimes people like see their partner and go, "This isn't who I thought they were." But then sometimes, if they really listen to them, they say, "Well, maybe there were these red flags all along.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
I really did know. Maybe this isn't a total change in
Mhm.
this person. Maybe it's just how things
Mhm.
have happened over time."
Mhm.
So that compassion, there is no point in beating yourself up. How did I
Yes.
make such a horrible choice?
Yes.
That just people do that and it
Yes.
doesn't help. Like,
Oh, I love that answer because I feel like that is so relevant in the divorce area.
yeah,
Just beating yourself up. Why did I ignore the red flags?
right. Right. And I'm going to say, we've all, whether it's in parenting or partners or whatever it is, maybe what we just have to do is adopt this idea that we all made the best decisions we could at the time.
Yeah. Mhm.
And maybe they didn't work out the way we wanted them to.
Mhm.
But how does it help to beat ourselves up over those? What are all the things I should have done differently?
Well, when you say it that way, I feel like that compassion lens is the perfect feeling because when you made the decision to ignore the red flags, whatever version of that woman made that decision, maybe now she's 50, maybe when she was 25, and she made the decision to ignore the red flags, there is compassion for that 25-year-old who did not have the confidence to trust her instincts
Hmm.
or maybe had fear that if I don't say yes to this person, I'll never get asked again. Or maybe there's a disconnect that happened and that person who decided to get into this does deserve that compassion because they were doing the best they could.
Yeah. I love that. I love that when you say it that way.
They weren't a bad person. They were doing their best.
Right.
And it's like we just keep changing and growing. Like I love that video. Sometimes you see they use this technology and they take a child and they grow up
Mm.
through 18, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's like it doesn't stop. Like just because we stop getting taller when we're 20 or 18, we're still a different version of ourselves at 50 than we were at 25. It's a different person.
Totally. And I will tell you that, people walk into my office the first time really,
Mhm.
really scared of the unknown, whether they're the
Mhm.
one with the money or without they are really scared of the unknown. And being scared is a horrible place to be.
Mhm.
Flight, fight, or freeze.
Yeah, it's one of the three.
One of three. When you're afraid, it's one of those.
Mhm.
And that is such a hard. And yet, I see glimmers of who these people once were and can become again.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just when they fleetingly can give me a smile between the tears,
Yeah.
they look like a totally different person.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And I've been fortunate enough to remain, as friends with some of my, not all of them, but a few of my clients. I love hearing good things, seeing them progress. Right?
Mhm.
Like sometimes you see a kid or a teenager who's really struggling, but you see that they're going to be all right, right? And sometimes people who are starting on this divorce journey are just like that.
Mhm.
And so that's maybe for me the biggest strength of collaborative. Again, is this focus on the future because the litigation experience only keeps them focused for as long as it takes, a year or two or more, on the worst moments of the past.
Mhm.
And they are
Mhm.
just stuck there. They
Mhm.
cannot move on.
Yeah.
So if you can, it's not going to be great. There are going to
Mhm.
be huge compromises. There just are. You can't take what the amount of money that was spent on one household and divide it into two households and have everybody be in the same place unless there's a whole lot of money, and typically there
Yeah.
isn't that much. Um, so there are going to be changes, but kind of a little bit band-aid quick, band-aid slow. The sooner you can start moving that path to the future, as opposed to this litigation of being stuck in the worst thing that happened 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years ago, the better everybody's going to be.
Yes. I love that analogy of the car with the small rear view mirror and the big, huge view forward, and how we get lost and we lose perspective in these situations.
Mm-hmm,
And this is the way to do it, is to
mm-hmm,
really move forward.
mm-hmm,
So I love that. And I think it's so helpful because we want to get through the pain and get to the other side.
mm-hmm.
And we can get there that way. We gotta keep looking forward. And
Yeah,
the idea with the children too is it adds so many layers, but at the end of the day, it's when the case is closed, you just go on living your life, no matter what. So
yeah.
you might as well make it the best possible outcome.
Right. And you use that word compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And so we haven't talked much about the kids, but
Mm-hmm.
the motto for kids is that kids see themselves as half mom and half dad, or
Yeah.
half mom and mom one and half mom two, or half dad one, whatever it is.
Yes.
They see themselves that way.
Yes.
And if so much of this conversation is how bad parent A is,
Mm-hmm.
what gets translated to the kids is if my parent is so awful, what does that make me?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying the parents don't do bad things. They do. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not minimizing any of that,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we are certainly in Florida, we have moved to 50-50 parenting being the default,
Yes.
what happens way more often than not,
Yes.
especially with two working parents. It's like
Yep.
the only way to manage,
Mm-hmm.
those days of after divorce there being enough money for one parent to stay home full time with the kids are not a lot of those anymore, right?
Yes.
So even if that's what happened before the divorce, not
Mm-hmm.
likely after the divorce. So that compassion, if we can be compassionate towards the kids and both parents,
Mm-hmm.
try to get the parents to the place where they can, again, shrink those bad behaviors and expand the good ones,
Yes.
And I don't see how you get there with that focus on last Sunday, this was the terrible thing you did, even though
Right.
that may have happened.
Right.
Just, do
Yes.
everybody have to be safe? Absolutely.
Right.
So but even in those outlier cases where there's domestic violence, where there's interpersonal violence, where there's addictions,
Mm-hmm.
and where there's mental health issues, our courts are not designed to get, there are no good outcomes, less worse outcomes for family. Our courts can't do it.
Okay.
So we have even used the collaborative frame, even on those really, really hard cases.
Oh, wow. Because you're still dealing with a family. You're dealing with the parents, children, and I can imagine that's still a much better outcome than having a judge make the decision
Yeah.
because there's so many more factors involved and it's not simple. There's so many layers to these situations.
Right. When I talk to new clients, I say we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about substance and we're going to talk about process.
Yep.
The substance is who's going to get what,
Mhm.
or what the parenting plan is going to end up looking like.
Yep.
The process is what we're going to use to get there.
Mhm.
And those, it's going to be collaborative. Is it,
Yep.
are you going to let a judge decide? Are you just going to
Yep.
do it yourselves?
Yeah.
Those process choices make such a huge difference, even
Right.
more than whether $10 goes on this side or that side.
Mhm. Yes. That's amazing. Well, this has been a very fascinating conversation. When did this start? These
It's
collaborative
really
divorces?
not that new. So in
Okay.
Florida, where I am, we have
Yes.
had a collaborative law on the books since 2017. And
Okay.
we and you don't have to have, in the US there's a what we call a Uniform Collaborative Process Law Act, and about 30 states have adopted it in the last 5 to 10 years, and some are still in there. There have been some brand new adoptions very recently. um, so a lot of this is it's old but it's new. And
Okay.
it makes me really sad that we haven't done a better job of getting it out in the public
Yes.
consciousness that this
Yes.
exists and an option. It's sort of community by community. Here in Central Florida, we have a really strong presence. Um, I was out in Wisconsin giving a speech last week, and they have a wonderful collaborative community. California has a huge community. Texas, New York. I mean, it's out
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for allowing me
Yes.
to reach your listeners
Thank
with
you. And
this information.
thank you so much. And how would a person listening that's really curious, what is the best strategy for them to find that in their community?
Okay,
Is it just
so the international community is, there's a website, collaborativepractice.com.
okay?
Collaborativepractice.com.
Okay.
And they can find professionals all over the world, and they
Okay.
can find information about collaborative practice.
Okay, great.
Um, if they're in Florida,
Mhm.
we have a Florida community, collaborativepracticeflorida.com.
Okay.
And then we have about 15 or 16 practice groups around the state of Florida.
Okay.
I'm in Orlando, and we're Collaborative Divorce Central Florida.
Great. Great. So people can research collaborative divorce in their state and see
Absolutely.
what kind of groups come up and just start the process then.
Absolutely. And they can identify lawyers who identify as doing collaborative divorce.
Mhm.
Um, and some kind of talk the talk but don't walk the walk.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
caution people, if they walk into a lawyer's office who says, "Oh, well, there's that collaborative stuff, but then if you have to go to trial, you'll lose me." That's
Yeah.
not really a collaborative lawyer. So
Okay.
look elsewhere.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and it's very scary hiring a lawyer, that whole process.
Okay.
It just
Okay.
is. But I encourage people to, and divorce lawyers have a bad rep, we know this. But I so encourage people to remember that the lawyer works for you, not the other way around.
Okay. Yeah.
So if they're not returning phone calls, if there's not responsive, if your gut says this is not a good fit and I'm paying all this money for what? Just like people aren't afraid to get a second opinion if it's a medical issue,
Hmm.
don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Okay, fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Elaine, for sharing this with me, with the listeners. And I know that someone's going to hear this and it's going to happen at the exact right time for them to open up to the possibilities of a more collaborative and compassionate divorce. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thank you.